Hey guys, welcome to the video. Okay, today we are going to be looking at llama arts and their scary videos. So, tuck into your blankets, grab a little snack, and let's watch some llama arts. And also, you guys should subscribe to these people. They're really cool. Let's hop in.
Steve and Dave use eToro to trade cryptocurrencies. Steve has a watch list for promising
Story 2. Okay, let's get
It was around 3 years ago. I was 17 years old and I worked at the local library in my city. The library was located in the middle of the city, but was totally abandoned in the evenings. I only worked in the evenings, when all the older staff had already gone home. My colleague and I were the only one left there that night,
Scary.
as it was the day before Christmas and a blizzard was going on outside. Not one single customer inhabited the building. My colleague Thomas was down at ground level, while I was sitting at my desk on the top level. Normally, I would take the time to study, but it was the holidays and I was completely bored to death. The library was recently renovated, so I could look outside through the big windows that they had put up. I mostly looked at the blizzard going on, thinking about my bike ride home. It was a dark December evening and the snow was piling up. I just really wanted to go home. It's really snowy out there, Tom. What do you say we close up early? No one's gonna show up anyway. Over. Your jokes are funny. Over. Just 10 minutes before we closed, I heard some people coming up the stairwells. It was some kind of family. One man and a woman with two girls.
What?
When they came through the door, I immediately saw that they weren't ordinary. The man had a pale, almost white face and wore red lipstick. The woman was also completely pale. They all wore clothing like they used to be in the 17 or 1800s. I just had my history exam, so I recognized it immediately. While I walked towards them, I saw that they were looking around as if they were lost. "Can I help you folks?" I asked them. They looked at me with big eyes, if I was talking Chinese.
It looks like they have big
I almost
eyes.
thought about bailing, but as we just had a meeting about customer satisfaction,
Please don't
I asked
have big
again,
eyes.
a bit louder.
Slanted, man.
"Can I help you folks?" They now all looked at me with a big smile and large eyes. I was totally creeped out and I didn't really know what to do anymore. "If I can help you, I'll be at my desk," I said, and I quickly walked away. When I was at my desk, I could still see the family just standing there, doing absolutely nothing. Tom, have you seen this family that just came in? Over. No one's come through the entrance. You good? Over. Now I was even more creeped out. When I looked up, I saw the man walking towards me. From the inside, I could almost cry, but I did my best not to show it. The man stood in front of me with his pale face and called out something in a language I couldn't understand. It sounded like English, but it sort of wasn't. I couldn't make out anything. I looked down at my computer to make it look like I was searching, hoping he would just take off. When I finally looked up, nobody was there. The whole floor was abandoned again. I did a quick sweep of the floor, but I found nobody. As if they just vanished. Just then, my colleague came up the stairs, and I told him what happened. He didn't believe me, and I thought I was trying to scare him. Luckily, there were security cameras in the library, so we could just watch what happened, right? After we closed the library, we went to the security office in the building and looked at the footage from earlier that evening. What I saw then was the creepiest thing ever. I was talking to nobody. The whole family wasn't on the screen. It was just me, talking to myself.
Well, he's crazy then. You were probably crazy, man. My mates. The roommate.
Looking for a new roommate is always a daunting task. Even though you interview and take the time to get to know that person, you don't truly find out who they are until you start living with them.
I bet.
I had begun searching for a roommate after I decided to leave my current residency. I was contacted a couple of hours after placing an ad on the Facebook Marketplace. The message read,
Hey, Chris. I'll be moving out of my current apartment this August, and I'm looking to room with someone new, as my roommates are moving to California this year. I'm 27 and am currently going to school. When I'm not at school, I enjoy hiking and watching movies. I also apprentice at a taxidermy shop on the days I don't have class. Hope that's not weird. It's always been a fun hobby of mine. Anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing back from you. Have a great day, Lunaire.
My first and most obvious reaction after reading the message was to check her profile. She was a medium height, had long, messy blonde hair and green eyes. In her profile picture, I saw her standing with a man and a woman shoulder to shoulder. They each adorned goofy grins and held up peace signs. Under the photo, the caption read, "Love my roommates." I smiled to myself and decided to send her a message back. The sun beat down on us as we hoisted various objects to the second floor of our new apartment. It took us a couple days to get everything out of the moving trucks and into our new place, but as soon as we did, a wave of relief washed over our sweat-drenched and sore bodies. After a couple more hours of rearranging, we each grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat on the porch. We reminisced about old 90s cartoons and what video games we obsessed over as kids, and as the sun started to set, I truly felt relaxed and confident that things were going to work out. A week later, I started a new job for a construction company that was owned by a good friend of mine. As I was getting ready, I heard the front door swing open. I walked into the living room to see Lunaire and her friend David sliding in a large box. "What you got there?" I asked. Through a strained grunt, she replied,
I bought a freezer to store some of the animals I'm planning on using in my taxidermy work. I hope that's all right.
I was obviously hesitant at first, as there was no mention of this happening in the first place, but I eventually accepted and returned to my room to continue getting ready for work. I came home at around 9 p.m. after having a couple of beers with friends and noticed that the freezer was nestled snugly in the lower part of the pantry. A low hum could be heard reverberating off of the inner walls. I was curious to see what was inside, but didn't want to intrude on Lunaire's business, so I went into my room and changed into more comfortable clothing. After changing, I came back out into the kitchen and started making a sandwich. I opened the fridge and grabbed what I needed. As I turned around, I stubbed my toe on the edge of the island countertop and let out a long, exasperated grunt. Through my frustration, I slammed the fridge door shut and checked my toe to see if there was any bleeding. As I raised my head back up, I was greeted by a shadowy figure. Lunaire was standing in the doorway leading to her room. The darkness behind her almost seemed to envelop her.
Is everything okay?
She said in a deadpan tone. "Shit, yeah, I'm sorry. I just slammed my toe into the corner of the countertop as I was making a sandwich. I hope I didn't wake you."
It's fine.
She said, in the same deflated tone as before. She then turned around and walked back into the darkness of her room.
And she's creepy. A quiet ghost sucking off.
I could tell that she was pissed, so I quietly made my sandwich and retreated back to my room as well, only hearing the low hum from the freezer as I closed my door. I had the next day off, so I was able to sleep in a little longer than usual. When I finally emerged from my room, I walked into the kitchen to make breakfast. As I opened the refrigerator, I noticed that the light wasn't turning on and there was a lack of cold air escaping from inside.
That was not jelly.
I turned around and flipped the light switch to confirm my suspicion. Sure enough, the power was out. "Damn it," I muttered under my breath. I walked over to Lunaire's room and knocked on her door to tell her about the power outage if she didn't already know, but there was no answer. I then remembered that she had classes that day and probably wasn't home. I walked back to the kitchen and past the pantry. As I did, I slipped on the floor but was able to catch myself on the countertop. "What the?" I angrily exclaimed as I looked down at the floor trying to figure out what I had slipped on.
It was blood.
It was blood. It had started to leak from the corner of the freezer and pool onto the floor. I quickly tried to open the freezer to find out the cause of the viscous liquid, but then I noticed that it had a padlock attached to it.
I always wondered, how do they lock? How do they lock like that? It's just around the thing. You should be able to open it. Why does it lock like that? Why can't you open it? Cause that's I always wondered. Cause why? Cause that does it a lot, and I don't know why.
Remember seeing that before. I ran out to my car and grabbed my toolbox from the back seat. I approached the freezer and set my tools down on the nearby countertop. I then pulled out a small pair of bolt cutters and snapped through the metal of the padlock. It fell to the ground with a large thud. I creaked open the top of the freezer and was greeted with a putrid stench that permeated my nostrils. I quickly pinched my nose and walked away gagging in response. I guess I should have realized that was going to happen, I muttered to myself in between gags. After gaining my composure, I grabbed some gloves from under the sink and started taking inventory. I could see a couple of dead birds and plastic bags wedged into the corners of the freezer. I took each bag out and set them in the trash can nearby. That's when I noticed that the blood was coming from the corner of the larger black bag. I don't know why, but I decided to open the top of the bag and peer inside. I was greeted by large, milky white eyes, a swollen black tongue surrounded by cracked and bloated lips, and the matted hair of a human head. I swiftly dropped the bag and fell backwards onto the floor. My breathing had ceased to exist, and I grabbed the trash can next to me and expelled my disgust into it. I then ran out the door, got into my car, and called the police. As I sat in the interrogation room with a blanket over my shoulders, I couldn't help but think about the face I'd seen. It looked so familiar. That's when it finally hit me. I pulled out my phone and looked at Lunaire's profile picture. It was her old roommate, the one she said was moving to California.
I knew it was gonna be.
When the detective entered the room, she started the questioning process, asking me if I started noticing any weird behavioral occurrences around the apartment. Yeah, I stubbed my toe the other day and she creepily stood in the doorway. It seemed like she was pissed, but for some reason I had a strange feeling like she was concerned about something. That's when I connected the dots. She didn't come out into the kitchen because she heard me stub my toe. She came out into the kitchen because she thought I slammed the freezer instead of the fridge. A cold sweat started to form on my forehead as my surroundings became blurred. I could hear a low whine slowly starting to cover up the words of concern from the detective. As my vision started to clear, I could see another officer enter the room and whisper something into her ear as he handed her a piece of paper. "Do you have somewhere you could stay at?" she asked. I mean, I was planning on staying with my parents. They live about 30 minutes outside of town. Okay, she paused. Listen, I don't want to worry you, but we found this picture inside of your apartment. She slid the piece of paper across the table, and I immediately felt like someone kicked me in the chest. The head of Lunaire's other roommate sat on the chair. In the background, scrawled on the wall in blood, read, "Love my roommates. All of them."
Love my roommates. Keep them forever. that was that. Oh my god. The horn-headed man.
Moonlight peered through my window as I jolted awake. My clamorous breaths disturbed the silence of my dark room. I had just come out of a frightful dream that had me thinking it was all too real. With sweat on my brow, I sat up and grabbed my water from the nightstand and took a sip from the now warmed glass. My hands shook as I recounted my nightmare of the horn-headed man. In my dream, I was walking through my neighborhood, the street lights flickering as I made my way down the uninhabited sidewalk. Nothing threatening, just a walk through the midnight hours. A block down, I could see a figure in the distance, walking slowly towards me. His steps seemed mismatched and labored. He passed a few houses looking straight ahead, neither looking left nor right. His head was fixed on the sidewalk in front of him. As I was getting closer to my home, I could see him slowly starting to embark on my territory. I I quickly rushed to my front door and hurried inside. Through my window, I could see him walk past my property. I was thinking to myself, oh God, please have him keep going, please.
Nope, but he just paused.
He was just about to walk all the way past my front yard when he stopped. His body almost shifted abnormally as he turned to face my home. He just stood there, looking, not moving, just standing there. The man bore the horned head of a skeletal goat. His body was pale and looked fragile, and his fingers were thin and bony. I thought to myself, what does he want? Slowly, he started lifting a quivering arm and pointed right at me. I started to backpedal into the darkness of my house, when all of a sudden he let out an inhuman screech. That's when I woke up. Too frightened to go back to bed, I turned on the television and saw that the local news for early risers was on. My stomach dropped, and my body suddenly turned cold as I listened to the current news report. The news anchor on the television said, "Breaking news. A woman who lived on Columbia Avenue has been murdered. Local officials say that they received an anonymous phone call from the victim's home. We arrived at the house at around 12:20. We saw the victim inside and a card which rested next to her. The sheriff held up the card. On the back of it, I could see the image of the horn-headed man. The officer started to read. One down. Slowly I go. He then lifted his head back up. His blood started trickling from his eyes and mouth. I sat there shaking, and I couldn't breathe.
This has to be
Columbia's just 3 blocks away from me. I jumped out of my bed and ran to my window. Something within me made me want to look outside. That's when I saw him. He just stood there, looking, not moving, just looking. The horn-headed man, his body pale and fragile, and his fingers thin and bony.
Yo, AT, Win Quick app's about to go live.
Win Quick, what's that?
It's trivia. It's easy to play. You win cash prizes. And then dinner is on me. Yeah,
The woman.
It was a late, moonless, snowy night. I heard the chilling cry of a bobcat as I arrived home from my parents' house, where we had just had Thanksgiving dinner in northern Michigan. Exhausted, I had finally made it to my bed when my pregnant girlfriend asked for nacho cheese munchies. Reluctantly, I laced up my boots and went to my car. Due to the cold, it took me a while to start the car, which only made me more irritated. But eventually I got it started, and I arrived at the convenience store to retrieve my girlfriend's mandated snacks. As I left the store, walking back towards my car, I saw a shadow of movement out of the corner of my eye. What looked like a person stood near the dumpster, just out of the light. I stepped towards the figure, and she looked at me with a giant, sinister smile. Her face was so weathered, it looked like she had cracks all over her face. She was crouched down and appeared to be chewing on something. I looked to see what she was chewing on. To my surprise, it was a severed arm. It looked old, as if it had been rotting for weeks. I saw her glance at something in her pocket. I could see the outline of what looked like a pocket knife. As soon as I looked back up, she quickly charged me. I pushed her away and then ran back to the convenience store. I burst through the door and frantically yelled towards the cashier to call the police as I turned to lock it. He asked me, "What's going on?" I scowled at him and said, "Please, just call the cops." I looked back outside and saw the woman had moved across the street and was still scrutinizing me as she maintained her malevolent grin. "Look, there's a girl out there who's trying to kill me." Looking over me, he replied, "I don't see anyone out there, sir." Those words shook me, even to this day. When the police reached the gas station, they began looking around for the woman while one of the officers asked me what had happened, and I told him the details of the encounter. One of the officers came back and said he couldn't find anything. I then took them back to where I first noticed her. We spent a few minutes intently searching, but there was no proof she was ever even there. The officer cocked his head and looked at me as if I was deranged and asked me in a judgmental tone, "Are you feeling okay?" I was about to defend myself, and then I started to think. I am tired, and I have had a couple of drinks, so I just told him, "Yes, sir. Sorry for bothering you. I hope you have a nice night." And then I drove home. I got home at around 4 o'clock in the morning. My girlfriend greeted me with an angered but concerning tone of voice. She asked me,
Where were you? Are you okay?
so I told her everything that happened. Of course, she didn't believe me. I couldn't get to sleep that night. I sat in my bed questioning my sanity, wondering if it was all even real. Am I crazy? Maybe I'm just tired. But no, that can't be it. I saw it. But if I saw it, why was there no proof? Where did the arm go? Where did she go? Before I knew it, it was 7 in the morning, and I had to go to work. I threw on my jacket as I was about to head to the construction site, and I put my hand in my pocket and noticed that there was a hole in it. It wasn't there the other day. I thought, what if she caught my jacket as I ran? Which further proves my suspicion that she was real. I couldn't believe it. My mind completely went wild until my girlfriend kissed me goodbye. I told my friends at work what had happened, and they didn't believe me either. They made jokes about it the entire day, but I had my bowling tournament that day, so that gave me something to look forward to. I got home and hung my vest and jacket up and rapidly put on my bowling shoes and got my bowling ball. My girlfriend looked at me with a pleasant smile and said,
When will you be back?
"Probably around 11.
Don't be long.
I won't, don't worry." At around 10:30, the tournament had finally finished, and we had won. I was so thrilled I had forgotten about the woman. As we were leaving, I noticed something at the other end of the parking lot. It was that psychotic woman. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. She slowly started moving towards me while waving her knife in the air and making cuts. I quickly jumped into my car and turned it on. As I looked up, I saw she was standing in front of me, staring at me. She slowly walked over to my window, and she said in a quiet, deep, and scratchy voice,
Little pig, let me in.
I was frozen in fear, but I snapped back to reality when she banged on the roof of my car, screaming. I quickly slammed my foot on the accelerator and didn't let off it until I couldn't see her anymore. When I arrived home, I told my girlfriend what had happened. Like last time, she didn't believe me. I really thought I was insane, but I tried to forget about it and get some sleep. Later that night, I woke up and saw her in my room. All she said was, "Let me in," over and over as she got closer. She then started shouting,
Let me in, let me in, let me in. Let me in.
Come on, Paul. Stop being difficult.
Let me in.
I was wondering how in the world my girlfriend hadn't heard this going on. The woman was right next to me and held up a knife to me. That's when I fainted. I woke startled in my room, dripping with sweat.
Well, you're alive, Lopez.
Then I remembered I don't have a girlfriend, nor a house, or a family.
Come on, Paul. Time for your morning meds. Let me in.
Mindfully is an app that has your well-being in mind. It monitors your mood as you use your phone, letting you know the highs and lows of your phone use.
kid. Okay, now time for this one.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah, we're done after this one, my man.
Everything okay, ma'am? Huh. Goddamn shoe. There's still people. It's a quiet neighborhood. Maybe I'm just exaggerating. Is there something I can help you with, sir? Come on, man. You're seriously freaking me out. Okay, alright, I get it. No one calls me on my birthday, so this is, I guess, what you decided to do instead? Listen, guys, I played enough Silent Hill, okay? This is nothing.
We're watching you.
What the hell?
You like to be seen.
There's no one here. What's happening? You like to be seen. What the fuck are you people talking about? Please be a dream. Please be a dream. How the hell did I get here? Where are those people? What were those people?
And where?
Hello? Is anyone here? Stop it! I'm not making this video for attention or sympathy or
I'm watching
anything.
this last one.
I just want anyone who can help me to do that.
Actually, no.
My name's Daniel,
No.
and this is a story I wish I didn't have to tell. I've been a night owl my entire life. As a teen, I used to stay up way past midnight every night, watching terrifying videos on YouTube. I know now they were nothing compared to the horrors of the real world. Nothing compared to the tragedy my family and I went through. The story I'm going to tell to you now. My parents, being teachers, had always emphasized the importance of sleeping well to me and would definitely disapprove of my late-night routine. So I knew that if they'd caught me up at that time, I'd be in big trouble. At first, this wasn't a problem, but after I told them about a child predator in our neighborhood that I'd seen in one of my videos, they seemed to grow more and more paranoid, which was obviously understandable. Every night, I'd hear one of them wandering into my room, checking on me, and every night, I'd immediately turn off my light and pretend to be asleep. I never knew for sure if it was my mom or dad coming in, since obviously if I opened my eyes to see, they'd know I was awake. Mostly, I presumed it was my dad, from the heavy-sounding footsteps, but either way, I found it pretty hypocritical for them to preach to me about being up late when they
But one time, this one guy came in my room and he started to try to kill me.
were awake themselves. Sometimes I wondered if they knew I wasn't sleeping, because often it was only after what seemed like hours before they'd finally leave and go to check on Alfie. That's my little brother, and Lucy, my little sister. I'd have asked them about it, but I thought it would have confirmed any suspicions, which they seemed to already have about my staying awake deep into the mornings of the next day. Like I said, I guess they were just paranoid about the child predator. It was stupid for me to presume any of these things, and I'll never forgive myself for it, but I did it all the same. Anyway, one day, Lucy's school, where my parents both work, announced a school trip. It meant they'd be gone at some point next month from Saturday morning to Sunday morning, and it meant that I'd finally get to watch the horror movie my friend had lent me, that my parents had refused to let me watch. There was one downside, though. I'd be left to look after Alfie. He, being only 6 years old, my mom was reluctant to leave him in my care alone, but my dad defended
Oh, Alfie would turn into, like, possessed, I bet.
me, reminding her that Alfie had been up most of the night after a nightmare, so he'd probably sleep most of the day anyway. Besides, he reassured her, he's 17, he can be given a little responsibility. With a heavy heart, my mom agreed. I honestly wish she hadn't. Finally, the morning came for them to head off. It took longer than expected because my sister said some of her favorite toy dolls had been stolen, but eventually my mom persuaded her that they were probably just lost and told me to look for them whilst they were gone. I begrudgingly agreed, and soon they were ready to go.
But she never did.
As they were leaving, my mom gave me a stern word, reminding me to lock the doors, not go to bed too late, and take good care of Alfie. She told me she'd be watching through the security cameras to make sure I was looking after him properly. I told her she really didn't have to worry. Then we said our goodbyes, and they were off. Alfie and I spent most of the day playing outside, but came in after the frisbee landed near a strange man who Alfie said had been in his nightmare. I told him that was ridiculous, because even if he somehow was in his dream, he wouldn't be able to remember. Anyway, I went by myself to get it, and I have to admit that the man was fairly creepy. He had a huge grin, and his eyes, staring right at me, seemed to be permanently forced further open than they were designed to go. His clothes all seemed to have been made from someone 50 years younger, as they struggled to cling to his fully grown body. It was cold, but he was wearing a sun hat. A tiny one for children, which barely fit on his head. I recognized it, but didn't know how at the time. If I'd learned anything from the videos I spent my nights watching, I'd have abandoned the frisbee and left. But clearly I didn't, because not wanting to feel like a baby, I approached him. As I got closer to the man, his smile disappeared, and he removed the hat and held it behind his back. I began to see his features in greater detail. He looked tired. He was pale and his eyes were bloodshot and had huge gaping bags under them. In the entire time it took me to get to him, the man didn't move an inch. other than the odd blink. Not even his eyes shifted. At this stage, I was getting uneasy. I just wanted to get it and leave. Hi, can I have my Frisbee back, please?
No.
Thanks.
Not Frisbee.
The thought of that conversation, if you can even call it a conversation, still makes me shiver. I locked the front door as soon as we got home.
And that was the
We were
whole
both a bit
story.
shaken, and Alfie looked tired, so I gave him some more food and put him to bed. It took him about 2 hours to fall asleep. He kept complaining that he'd have another nightmare about that man. I told him he wouldn't, but he wasn't convinced.
Shut the hell up, Alfie.
I see him every night.
Go to
He
sleep,
whispered to me.
Alfie.
Well, if you see him again, don't worry, I'll be here to fight him off. This seemed to settle him down, and soon he was fast asleep. At about 11, it was time to put my film on. I couldn't have my mom knowing that I was watching it, so I did something naive and ignorant. Something I'll always regret. I turned off the security cameras. I watched it for 2 hours straight, my eyes never straying from the screen. Until I replayed the last few seconds of the film. But the sound didn't happen again. It was coming from inside my house. Alfie? He didn't reply, but I could see him under the covers, so I thought he was just asleep, and I didn't want to wake him up. I swear, if I thought anything worse had happened, I'd have checked. You okay? I thought maybe I was just worrying too much, hearing things. It was late, and the film had been scary. Maybe it was just all in my head. I knew from the sound of his voice it was him. Alfie! Alfie? Usually this much noise would have woken him up. Alfie, what's going on? I knew something was wrong. It was him.
The windows were open.
The doll. I couldn't believe it. It had to be some kind of sick prank. It had to be. But it wasn't.
It looks like he's in court while he's...
It was the man I'd spoken to earlier. He'd taken my brother.
No, not Alfie!
Alfie! I was certain they'd be gone before I could reach them. But he didn't set off straight away. He watched as I tried helplessly to do something. I screamed and I shouted and I banged on the windows and I tried to open the doors, but nothing worked. It was all in vain. There was nothing I could do for my brother, my best friend, as he was stolen away from me. It was too late for the police to do anything. It was too late for anybody to do anything. He was gone, and in time, I'd have to come to accept that.
You know, I found out the hard way the last time that I tried this. And I haven't seen this done with any other sodas before, and I just don't think it's going to be as crazy.
Come on. The grandma finally trying Mentos and Pop.
You have 9 new messages. First message.
Hello? If you're out with Alfie, call me back when you get back in, please. Love you guys. Bye.
End of message. Second message.
Daniel, we've been trying to get a hold of you for hours. Is everything all right? Did you turn the security cameras off?
They'll be fine. The security system probably just glitched out. Hey, Alfie, just call us as soon as you can, okay? You know how Mom worries.
End of message. Third message.
Listen, Daniel, we're starting to get really worried now. If you don't pick up, one of us is gonna have to come home to check if everything's okay. Please pick up.
End of message. Fourth.
Daniel, are you okay? Daniel! What's happened? Please answer! I couldn't bear to tell them anything. That was 7 years ago. We never found him. When I asked my parents if they'd seen anything at all of this man whilst they checked on us during the night, they only looked at me, concerned and confused. What do you mean? They asked. I could only stare at them in horror. Every night, around 2, you'd come and check on Alfie, Lucy, and me to see if we were sleeping.
Daniel?
They told me.
No, we didn't.
The police wanted security camera footage of the man, but of course, there wasn't any. It automatically deletes any footage older than 24 hours, which meant I'd been mindless enough to stop it recording on the only night we could have seen him. You know, the strange thing is, I don't even know if I want Alfie to be alive. Because if he is, God knows what that monster has done to him. Sorry if I've gone on too long, but the guilt's been killing me. I had to get it out somehow. I only tell it as a story because, well, people like stories, and I want as many people to hear this as possible. Alfie, if somehow you're watching, I love you, and I'm so sorry. Please, don't lose hope. And to the man who took you, it's not too late. If you have any heart at all, and even if you don't, please let my little brother come home. To everybody else, if someone comes into your bedroom at night, open your eyes. You never know who it might be. I still stay up late at night. But it's not because I don't want to sleep. It's because I can't. In case anyone sees Alfie, this is the last good photo we took of him.
The last good one.
That's it. Stay safe. Thank you.
Alfie. Alright. That's the end of the video. See you guys next time.